I've been on the carnivore diet for just over a year now, and it's taken me through a number of really clear emotional and physical stages that I've watched other carnivores go through as well, 12 of them to be exact. So watch until the end of this video to see if your experience is the same. And if so, I'd love it if you would let me know in the comments which stage you're at. Stage 1, awakening. This is the stage of shock and curiosity. So this is the first moment that you hear about carnivore and you're both horrified and fascinated. Maybe it just shows up in your feed somewhere, or somebody sends you a video to watch, and you're listening to this person talking about carnivore and you're kind of disgusted but intrigued. You're just wondering, who could only live on meat? How could that even be possible? It must be so unhealthy. How extreme is that? And you start to maybe also feel a little bit curious, like drawn in by the testimonial. For example, the Michaela Peterson video, which when she was on Joe Rogan, that's my first introduction to carnivore. And I know a lot of other people have said the same thing when I've seen them interviewed and talking about their experience and how they came to carnivore. And so, you're watching someone like that, maybe her, maybe someone else, and you can't quite dismiss them. There's something that's really authentic about that person. They don't seem like they're making it up. Or maybe you start looking at the comments below the video, expecting to see all of these people having the same reaction of disgust and worry that this person is doing something so incredibly unsafe. And then instead, the comments are all saying, I've been a carnivore for 5 years. I've been a carnivore for 3 years. I've been a carnivore for 6 months. And they're not talking about heart disease and dropping dead. They're talking about all these amazing transformative experiences and results that they've had from it. And so you start to kind of feel curious and getting kind of drawn in. And maybe some of these people are speaking to issues that you struggle with specifically. And you start wondering, can this really be the answer to X, whatever it is that you're struggling with? At this stage, you're kind of torn between skepticism and curiosity, but the seed of possibility has been planted. Stage 2, immersion. This is down the rabbit hole. So next comes this obsession phase. You can't stop watching videos and reading about the carnivore lifestyle. And it starts to kind of make sense. Maybe you're binging on YouTube videos, you're watching YouTube doctors talk about the science behind it, influencers who are talking about their blood results, their experience with maybe weight loss or autoimmune or type 2 diabetes going away. You just find yourself fascinated and being drawn to watch these over and over and over, just endless amounts of videos. Of course, this means the algorithm is going to keep feeding you constant new content. And as you're watching the videos, you start to kind of be more open to believing the science and the testimonials that you're being exposed to. And through this process, this concept of only eating animal products starts to normalize in your mind. And you, at this stage, start usually to feel a bit of the dawning of hope. Maybe this can be the answer to that X, whatever your issue is that you've been struggling with. Then comes stage 3, contemplation. This is when you're secretly considering it. So now you're wondering, could I actually do this? Now, you may not have said it out loud yet, but you've started imagining it. You've started to kind of wonder about it. So this quiet internal debate between logic and fear starts to happen. You start hearing people talk about how you should do 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. And you start to imagine yourself doing that and picturing, what would that look like? What would I have to change? Could I even do it? Would I even be able to do it? And you're thinking about what foods you'd have to give up. And maybe as you're going through your day, you'd start thinking, well, I couldn't eat this anymore that I really like, or I couldn't eat that. Maybe you also start to wonder, maybe I wouldn't want this thing anymore. Maybe you catch yourself eating unhealthy foods and think, it'd be so great to not be in the grip of that anymore. I wonder if not having those things would actually, not be a problem if I was doing this carnivore lifestyle. So what happens is this sort of private desire starts to form behind the curiosity. Around this time, also, you start to work out your why. People talk about how important it is to have a why before you start experimenting with carnivore. This is the stage 3, when you actually start to figure out for you what that might be. For me, I wanted to lose weight, but that didn't feel like a good why for me. It was my arthritis. Ultimately, my osteoarthritis arthritis in my hands that became the why, that felt like it wasn't kind of a toxic why. I wasn't chasing weight loss and just following another extreme diet. So that's kind of how I framed it for myself. Whatever it is for you, if you're on the journey, it's quite possible that you've gone through this stage of formulating what your why is so that it feels like a reasonable and goal that you can really, that can sustain you through this experiment that you want to try. Stage 4 is the stage of commitment. This is the big I'm doing it moment. And so this is when you've made the decision, I'm going to try carnivore, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. I don't know when, but I'm going to try it. So this is kind of when you make the decision, you declare your intention, definitely to yourself, maybe even to other people, maybe to your partner, to a friend, to someone else who does carnivore perhaps. And during this time, during this stage, this is when you start looking at what your start date can be. That's where you're looking at your calendar and you're trying to find like a clean 30-day window. Where can I find 30 days that I don't have some kind of challenging food situation already planned? Like I'm not going to do it over Thanksgiving. I'm not going to do it over Christmas. I'm not going to do it over during the time when I'm on holiday for that week, or when it's, somebody's big birthday celebration, or I'm going on that, that food tour in Italy or traveling or something like that. And so you're looking for that 30-day window and you're feeling kind of nervous anticipation mixed with excitement because you've made the commitment. The commitment is to experiment, not to do a carnivore lifestyle forever and ever, because you can't even imagine that. You're committed to that 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever you decide to do. You've made the commitment to experiment and you've decided kind of when you're going to start. Stage 5 is the preparation stage. This is, I'll call it the prep zone. This is where you set yourself up for success mentally, physically, and also logistically. So you'll do things like cleaning out your pantry or sectioning off your shelf if you live with other people and you can't have total control over what's in the house. You also prepare by making sure that you have stocked the fridge with what you need, with the supplies, meat, eggs, butter, things like that. Maybe you stop buying vegetables or stop buying as many vegetables and just start thinking about how you can ease into the logistics that way. You also might decide to ease in through doing a ketovore or other low carb transition during this period. When I did it myself, I planned for an entire month transition of ketovore. And what I did was each week over that month, I gave up another type of plant or carb, so that I was doing it gradually and I was able to kind of walk myself into it kind of slowly. I'm not one of those people that just dives into freezing cold water. I'm one of those people that wades in, lets my ankles get kind of used to the temperature, and then I go in up to my knees, and then I go in up gradually more and more and more acclimatizing. And that's kind of what I did with ketovore. And during this period, you also start to turn down social events that you think might derail your start or get in the way of that first week or first however long, especially month of once you've jumped into carnivore. You also might start thinking during this stage how you'll explain yourself when people ask, people notice that you're eating a certain way, just so you don't sound crazy. You might kind of rehearse the little sound bites in your head. Maybe you've gotten some advice from carnivore influencers about saying things like, I'm just doing an elimination diet to control some issues that I've got and see if that makes a difference, or what foods that I'm sensitive to. Or you might say, I'm just doing kind of a zero carb thing at the moment. Just kind of the way to explain it so it doesn't invite too many questions, hopefully, that gives you at least an answer when people have questions about it, because you're around other people sometimes when you eat and you can't change that. Right. So stage 6, initiation. This is, let's call it baptism by fat. This is the moment you begin. And it's not always smooth sailing. In fact, for a lot of people, it's not smooth sailing. I would say that it's more unusual. If you watch my video series where I'm working with Kathy on her carnivore journey, that is not the norm. She started carnivore with no prep, dove straight in with massive sugar addiction, and didn't have a single side effect from going cold turkey off sugar. That is not the norm for most people. In the first few days, few weeks, and even months for some people, you can experience detox symptoms like oxalate dumping, keto flu, extreme cravings, feelings of deprivation, maybe low energy, things like that, that potentially can derail your carnivore journey. So this is why it's really good to prepare by understanding that these things can happen and have your solutions ready. Like have your black tea ready so that if you get the keto flu, you can, or oxalate dumping symptoms, you can have a little bit of black tea and kind of put the brakes on that a little bit, or make sure your electrolytes are balanced, that you're getting enough of electrolyte, salt, hydration in general, enough rest, those kinds of things. So you're really kind of adjusting while your body adjusts to this new way of eating and to not having any carbs. Now, during this initial adjustment period, it helps to know that you might need to prepare for it, that it might happen to you, but it also is a great time to use mindset tools. Like, for example, one of my favorite mindset tools and what I'm an expert in is EFT tapping, emotional freedom techniques. And this channel also goes into exploring that. And I've got a video where I tap with somebody who's got a sugar craving. And so EFT can be a great way to handle everything from doubt, like how will I be able to eat this way? It feels like I'm restricting myself, or just the symptoms themselves, and kind of help you deal with the physical stress that comes from doing that switch over. Now, during this stage 6, you might see positive results starting to happen already, or you might not. You know, sometimes you have to kind of go through this massive healing stage where you do this transition, you become fat adapted before you actually notice the results in whatever way you want to notice them. If all you want to do is lose a bit of weight, usually that happens pretty quickly because you no longer have that inflammation that comes from eating the plants, the carbs. And so a certain amount of water weight can be lost straight away, that weight that comes from inflammation. But if you've got more complex things that you want to lose, or if you want to lose fat specifically, which takes longer for your body to use up extra stored fat, or you've got arthritis or autoimmune or something, these things can take a bit more time to reverse. So that can add to the challenge of this 6th stage in the carnivore journey, because if you're not seeing the results that you want straight away, it can be a little bit demoralizing. And again, EFT tapping can help you navigate that and just kind of make it through that stage. And it's really good to get through that stage, because the next stage waiting for you is stage 7, the adaptation stage. And this is where the switch really flips. What happens now is you feel the shift. Suddenly it goes from being challenging, because a lot of those detox symptoms, just you're done, you're through that stage, and it's suddenly easy. And maybe you can't even explain why. It's just that you suddenly are aware, hey, I'm not struggling anymore the way I was. And again, this can take different amounts of time for different people. Don't compare yourself to someone else. There are carnivore influencers out there that talk about oxalate dumping and oxalate crystals coming out of their eyes and things like that for 18 months after they started the carnivore journey. And then there are other people that within maybe 2 weeks, the sugar cravings are gone. They don't have the headaches. They don't have the fatigue anymore. I wasn't a massive plant eater. I mean, I always felt like I should eat more vegetables than I was eating. So the good news is when I actually went carnivore, I didn't have a huge amount of detoxing to do. And I didn't have massive sugar cravings because I'm not really a big sugar person to begin with. So I was kind of through that main period, I would say 2 weeks in. So anywhere between 2 weeks and a year and a half, different for different people. But when you get to this stage where that switch flips and you have adapted, you're fat adapted, what you have to look forward to is energy and clarity surging. This is where you go, oh my gosh, it's like you've suddenly caught that carnivore wave that makes you feel, now I get why I'm doing this. Now the motivation doesn't come from focusing on your why and focusing on getting through the detox symptoms. The motivation is coming from how good you feel. You start to feel mental calm, and that replaces food anxiety. You don't have the food noise anymore. And sometimes for some people, that can just be just a brand new experience. It was like that for me too. You also at this stage realize that you're not missing anything anymore. You don't feel deprived. You don't feel left out of, you don't have food FOMO, and you're starting to feel confident enough and relaxed enough in your ability to do this because it's kind of sustaining you itself, that you can actually start socializing again in ways where there's food. So you might accept dinner invitations with friends, and you look ahead to see what the menu has, if there's something that you can eat and stay on your carnivore way of eating. If not, maybe eat a big steak before you go out, and then just tell your friends or whoever you're having dinner with that you're not really that hungry. You'll just have some sparkling water or something like that. I had a barbecue at this point during this stage where I just invited a whole bunch of friends, and I said, I'm going to make lamb on the barbecue. That's all there's going to be here. If anybody wants anything else, feel free to bring side dishes. And in the door walked just dish after dish after dish, beautiful looking, everything from potato salads to vegetable salads to desserts to breads. It looked like gorgeous food, but it didn't look like food to me. I mean, obviously I knew it was food, but I didn't feel any more compelled to eat any of it than I would feel compelled to eat flowers in a garden that I thought, oh, those flowers are beautiful. I mean, the food that they brought looked like it could be photographed for the cover of a gourmet magazine, but it didn't look like food to me. I wasn't interested in it. In fact, I was really excited that there were so many kind of carb side dishes for my guests, because I made me realize they're going to fill up on that stuff, and that I was sure I was going to get enough lamb to have my proper carnivore meal. So that's just an example of the way you can adapt. And that happened at this stage 7 when I felt really comfortable. I was having such a good time on carnivore. It felt so easy. It was no problem for me to continue and to eat my carnivore lifestyle in front of other people who were eating carbs. And it wasn't a problem at all. I also, around this time, started seeing results. I mean, really big results, and feeling really excited about those results. Some of those results were things that were my why. The inflammation in my arthritis in my hands went away, but I started to notice things I didn't even plan on fixing, that I didn't even ever think about as being problems, until suddenly they weren't anymore. So it's a very exciting stage. I wish for everybody that when you get on that carnivore journey, that I hope for you to get to stage 7 as quickly as possible. It'll take as long as it takes, but just know that once you get to stage 7, it just feels like it's all worth it, and it's gotten easy. Right. So stage 8, this is the expansion stage. And I would call this food freedom high. Now comes the joy. You feel incredible. And the simplicity of eating this way just feels like absolute freedom. You experience deep satiety and deep calm. You're sleeping really well. Your food noise has completely disappeared. You're not obsessing over what to eat. You're not worrying about what to eat or when to eat or how much to eat. You're really just letting yourself intuitively eat whatever you need. Some days you eat more than other days. It's just whatever feels right. You're listening to your body's signals, and you're getting really acquainted with what satiety is for you. And because of all this, life just feels lighter and more focused. You have more energy for work. You have more energy in general. And the gains just keep compounding. Like what started to happen in step 7 now kind of supercharges. And this is when your why turns into multiple whys, that's part of the reason that you have so much joy. Stage 9, integration. You can think of this as meat zen. So this is where the excitement fades a little bit, but in the best way, because this has become your new normal. You don't even think of yourself really as being on a carnivore diet unless you're with people that aren't eating carnivore. It's just become effortless. The routine of buying and sourcing the meat, the animal products that you're eating feels effortless. You're into a rhythm with it. Maybe you've hacked all kinds of this is the stage where I had frozen steaks that I knew that I could do in my air fryer. And the whole thing from preheating, cooking, and resting the steak was like half an hour maximum for beautiful medium rare steaks. I also had learned how to use my slow cooker to do incredible juicy, rich briskets. And I knew how to quickly make bacon and eggs and things. And so depending on how much time I had, I could just decide, how much time do I have? Okay, I know exactly what I'm going to make. And it was just really, really easy. The health improvements have now become steady. They've become predictable. And now if somebody asks you, what benefits did you experience on the carnivore diet? You can answer, but you don't even think of all the benefits because they're just so second nature now. I was on Dave Mack's YouTube channel and I was listing all the benefits I'd experienced. And then like the next day after that interview, I started thinking of other things and going, oh, I forgot to mention that. I forgot to mention that, because it's your new normal. You're just getting used to better health and you rarely think about food anymore because you don't have to think about it other than when you need to go shopping or in the moment, like I said, when you realize this is how much time I have to make myself something to eat. So this really quiet, peaceful satisfaction settles in. And funny thing about this stage is that people start complimenting you on your willpower at this stage. I guess maybe if they're not scared you're going to drop dead, when they've stopped being worried about you, they start going, yeah, that really seems to be working for you. I'm really happy for you. I'm really impressed at your willpower. I mean, you've really stuck with it. And you just laugh because you know that you've never done anything easier in your whole entire life. Willpower doesn't have anything to do with it. And now stage 10 comes temptation. Let's call this the one bite experiment. So eventually curiosity returns and you wonder, what if I just had one bite of this thing? Or you are in a situation where you haven't prepared properly and maybe you feel like you would be hurting someone's feelings if you didn't take a bite, or for whatever reason, you didn't want to have to explain yourself. Or maybe it was just temptation at a moment of weakness and you go, I'm just going to see what happens if I eat a little bit of this. So this is where you're kind of testing your limits with the foods that you used to eat all the time and foods that you used to really like. And you're kind of nervous. You're kind of scared. Maybe you don't know what it's going to do to your body. Maybe you decide to just impulsively give in to temptation, or maybe you decide to just carefully take one bite. Regardless of how you approach it, you do end up having that little experiment. This is where you're testing your limits with the things that you used to eat, used to enjoy. Sometimes the result of this is fine. Sometimes this 10th stage comes and goes in like a 2-hour window. The next day, you're back on track. Whether or not you have a negative physical reaction to what you ate, depending on what you ate, how much you ate, how high your sensitivity is to it, or whether you have an emotional reaction or whether you have no reaction. And this is where the stages can really be different for different people, because for some people, this stage can last days or weeks or months, even with some people years. Like if you had a really massive sugar addiction and then you binged out on birthday cake or something like that. There are people who talk about how it took them 2 years to get back in the mindset, back on the carnivore wagon. And then it's also possible for it to take, like I said, a couple of hours. So sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's disastrous. People just never have any idea how long they'll be in stage 10 for. So be very careful about this stage. And be aware that when it happens, you've got to maybe have some strategies in place to try to prevent yourself from going down that like multi-day, multi-week, multi-month, or even multi-year slippery slope. And at this point, in this stage, you really do realize how much your body has changed, because you learn that reintroducing these foods can come with consequences. Like I said, usually physical consequences. Your gut microbiome has a whole different profile than it did before. It's geared towards eating meat. And then suddenly you eat some carbs, some plants. You could have an upset stomach. I noticed that I did it with a bit of sourdough bread and I had a bit of bloating the next day and I felt a little bit tired and uncomfortable in the evening. The next day, it's like I had a bread hangover and I hadn't even had that much bread. It actually wasn't, it took about 3 days for that small amount of bread that I'd had to feel like it was out of my system. That discomfort actually made it easy for me to jump into stage 11. But if you don't have those negative consequences, or you just blow through them and you just keep up the next day, eating more bread, eating more carbs, eating more plants, eating more whatever it is, sugar, you might find that your body kind of switches back to, you lose that fat adaptation and you're out of ketosis, and now you're back to the way you used to be, and it can almost feel like a distant memory, even just the mental game of being on carnivore, because it feels like you're in this prison of carbs again, and you're only just dreaming about what the freedom of carnivore was like. However long it takes you to get back, if you do experiment and you do find yourself in stage 10, stage 11 is renewal. And this is the slip and then the comeback. So if you do fall off the wagon, this is the stage of self-awareness and recommitment. So important in this stage is recognizing that you've relapsed without guilt. Like, the last thing you want to do is start beating yourself up about what you've done. It was a mistake, or maybe it was something that you didn't have a choice in, and just accept it and move on, and don't let yourself get too stuck in it, because it's important to understand here. And at this stage is where we start to realize that there's a difference between the emotional versus the physical cravings. And eating carnivore by itself really can take care of and get rid of so many physical cravings for different kinds of foods, but it often doesn't get rid of the underlying emotional cravings. And it's kind of like the excitement and the getting used to carnivore and all of the great benefits and the newness of it, the honeymoon stage, all these different earlier stages of carnivore kind of turn the volume down on the emotional aspect of cravings and unhealthy eating patterns. And so at this stage 11, this is where it's time to confront those and recognize that you can return to the carnivore way of eating, but you're doing it with more clarity, more confidence, more resolve, and more experience, because you've done all those other stages and you know the benefits and you know how to deal with any re-entry symptoms if you have them. And EFT tapping can be an amazing tool to help you get back on the wagon, can help you deal with the physical symptoms, the emotional doubts, the guilt, any emotions that you're experiencing as a result of having kind of stepped off the journey. And when you're trying to build up the confidence to get back on track if you need to. But it also, even if you just had a 2-hour slip up, or a 15-minute slip up, and then you were firmly resolved to stay carnivore and not fall off the wagon any more than that, it can still be a kind of a moment of realization that, oh my goodness, I'm shocked that I actually still had this craving. I'm shocked that I still have a part of me that wants to eat that sugar or that bread or those chips or whatever it is. That's where EFT can really come in handy. And I've got videos about that. I'm going to be working with people more and more on this channel about how to work on the emotional connection you have to certain foods, and really treating that at the roots so that it doesn't come up and threaten and derail or make uncomfortable or challenge your carnivore journey moving forward. Right. So stage 12, liberation. So this is deep healing and true food freedom. This final stage of the carnivore journey, it's not about food anymore. It's about peace. So this is where the emotional and the physical healing are fully integrated. This is where your mood, your hormones, and your energy are completely balanced. This is where you're eating without obsession, without guilt, without fear. Carnivore is just how you naturally eat now. It's become completely effortless. It's become part of who you are. And at this point, this stage can come 6 months into the carnivore journey, or it can come 5 years into the carnivore journey. Like I said earlier in this video, it's different for different people. Don't judge your journey according to anybody else's. But when you do reach that stage, you can make a decision. You can go beyond that 12th stage. You can then decide for yourself, and we can think of this as exploration and personal evolution. If you want to, you can stay in stage 12 the rest of your life. And that's the carnivore journey for you, is a lifetime way of eating. But for some people, we decide for whatever reason that you want to experiment with plants again, you've fully integrated your healing, you've had amazing benefits. Now you want to find out what your limits are. You might be curious to find out what plants can I eat? Maybe you want to incorporate certain plants because you enjoy eating them, and maybe you're going to do it in a different way now, where meat and animal products become the basis of your diet, but you're going to shift a little bit more into ketovore or a ketogenic diet, but you're going to do so in a mindful way. You're going to do it with a clear understanding of what can I eat without reversing my healing, because everybody's different. There are some people who can eat some grains. There are some people who can eat some nuts, some seeds, some vegetables, some fruit, and depending on the amount, not have any ill effects at all from it. So they've used carnivore as the ultimate elimination and healing diet to kind of reset their whole system. And now they're going to start experimenting very slowly, very carefully, very mindfully, watching what happens to their body when they eat certain plants. I'm planning that when I've been carnivore for 2 years, that's when I'm going to start experimenting. I think this is what I imagine. I might get to 2 years and say, nah, I don't really care. Don't really want to. I want to start to maybe eat something like avocados for a couple of weeks, very carefully and slowly, and just see how my body reacts to them. And if I'm fine with avocado, it doesn't mean I'm going to be buying avocados every day or even every week. It just now goes into the basket of, I know that I can eat that when I travel or go to somebody's house for dinner. It's just easier. So I plan to find out, this is the intention anyway, if there are plants, and there might not be, but I'm curious, and my intention is to find out if there are plants, and if so, what they are, that I can eat if I'm traveling or going to someone's house. I don't see myself ever buying vegetables and fruit again. I just don't see it happening. I just kind of want to know, what can I eat if I'm in a restaurant or at someone's house or I'm traveling, and it's easier to just eat plants with my meat than not. And I might find out that there are no plants that it's easier to eat than not in those cases. It's about learning what my body's signals are telling me about what's right for me, and deciding what, if anything, belongs in my long-term plan. That could change again in another 5 years. One thing I've learned from the long-term carnivores that are on the internet, they're on YouTube, in social media, is that it's a process, and people are discovering all along and on this journey. The journey keeps moving forward. Your body is changing. The world is changing. Your life goes through different stages, and that can mean making little adjustments to this journey, and that's totally fine. It's finding your personal version of sustainable food freedom. So those are the 12 stages of carnivore, from disbelief to deep peace. I would love, again, for you to share what stage you're at, and I would love for you to put that in the comments below. And please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Healing isn't just physical, it's emotional, and it changes everything.